Okay, today we're going to be taking a quick look at how we can create a simple Python script to detect secrets inside local files and directories. Now the first question you might have is, what is a secret? Well, a secret can be defined as a digital authentication credential. Typically these are things like API tokens, security certificates, database username and passwords, really anything that provides access to an external service or system. Now, these secrets are really the keys to the kingdom. And as developers, we really need to make sure that these secrets are stored securely with tight access control, but we also need visibility into our internal systems to be able to see if these secrets have been sprawled. The challenge is, though, that secret detection can be really quite difficult. This is because secrets are generally computer-generated strings, but they can look identical to non-sensitive computer-generated strings like unique identifiers or public keys. Distinguishing between the two means that we have to take into account the context of the code. Luckily, however, we can do this simply. Thanks to the GetGuardian API, we can use this to do all of the heavy lifting for us. Now, I know that using an external API for something so sensitive like secrets may be triggering, but I think it's important to know that the GetGuardian API doesn't store any data and it's stateless. But in addition to that, I would also really recommend that when we find secrets in compromised places through scanning, that we revoke them anyway. But there's some really big advantages to using this method to do secret detection. And this is because that all we need to do is write a simple Python script that compiles the information we want to scan, in our case the files from a local directory, into an array, and then we just palm it off to the API to scan it. We also have the Python GetGuardian client, which is going to do a lot of the communication for us as well. Why this is cool is because really we need to be able to detect secrets in all of our services. So if all this is doing is compiling information and sending it over, well, this part will be the same for really anything. If we want to scan Slack channels, for example, to see if any secrets have been sent unsecurely. Maybe we want to check emails. Maybe we want to create a pre-commit Git hook. We can do all of this using this method, and it makes it really simple to use custom secrets detection, which I think is really cool. But enough about that, let's jump onto the computer and run through our example. Okay, so before we get started, just be aware that there is a blog that goes through all the information that we're going to run through here today, and it has all the lines of code that we're going to go through with more detailed explanations. So if you want a little bit more information or you want to go through it at your own pace, then feel free to check that out. The link will be in the description below. The first thing that I'm going to do is I'm just going to create a project folder. So just in my terminal, I'm going to create that. Once I hit inside that project folder, I'm going to create two files. Now I'm going to create first my .env file. My .env file. This is what's going to store our environment variables. So this is going to be our API token. The second file I'm going to create is our actual script. I'm just going to call this scanner.py. Right, I'm just going to open these up so that they're all ready. So before we get coding, we first need to install the dependencies that we're going to be using in this. So let's go to the first one, which is the Python GetGuardian client. Now, this is an open source project on GitHub, so you can take a peek into the inner workings if you want to. But for the moment, we're just going to install this using the Python package manager pip. So in our terminal or command line, we're just going to run the command pip3 install. I'm going to use the upgrade flag just so that I have the latest version, and then our project Python py GetGuardian. And this installs the Python client onto our machine so that we can use it within our project. Now, the next thing that we're going to need to do, as I mentioned before, we're going to be using the API to do the scanning, so we need an API token. So we can grab this at the GetGuardian dashboard. It's completely free. So if you hit the dashboard.getguardian.com, you can sign up either using GitHub or your email account. And once we have the dashboard open, let's navigate down to the API section, and we're going to generate a new API call key. I'm just going to call this directory scanner. So once we have our API token from GitGuardian, we're going to open back up our .env file. I'm going to create a variable. I'm going to call it gg_API_key, and we're going to paste our API token into this file. Now, the advantages of using environment variables means that we can keep this API key, this secret, outside of our source code. And I'm going to be using a project called python.env, which is going to load in all the variables that we have in this .env file, and it's going to store them in the local memory. And this way, we never have to hard code secrets, like API keys, into our source code. So just quickly, if you're not familiar with using environment variables, check out python.env, and you can download this project. You can install it using pip, just like we did with the GitGuardian client, which is just pip install python.env, and that will install that project for you. And that means with just a few lines of code, we can easily and quickly load all the variables within this .env file into our project. Okay, so we're done. So we can start coding now, but first I'm just going to skip ahead a couple of steps. This is our finished code here, and I just want to outline the 4 different sections of this that we're going to be using. So the first one is just going to be loading all our dependencies in and the modules that we're going to be using. The second part is going to be processing all of our information and storing it as an array. So in our case, it's going to be our files within our directory. The third part is we're going to process all of that information in an array and break it up into chunks that meet the requirements of the API, process all of our chunks, and then the last part is going to be printing the results of those chunks from the API. So they're the 4 sections that we're going to be running through. Okay, so let's just start by importing our modules. So we're going to be using a lot of standard modules. We're going to be using the operating system functionality OS. We're going to be using the system parameters functions module, which is SYS. We're going to be using our traceback module. And we're actually going to be importing another module here, which is our glob module. What this does is it finds the path names of our files. And so we're going to use this to seek and load in all the files that we want to scan. Now, the next thing that we need to do is we need to import our API token. So that's what we just copied into our .env file. So to do this, it's just a couple of lines of code. We're going to go from .env, import load_.env, and then on a new line, load_.env. This may seem a little funny, but essentially what we're doing is we're loading in the .env package, and then we're loading our .env file. And that's it. We can actually use all the variables from our .env file within our project now. So let's do that. Let's create a variable called API_key, and we're going to assign this variable the value that we gave the GitGuardian API token in our .env file, which, if you remember, was gg_API_key. So now we have our API key imported. We can move on to the next step, which is importing our GitGuardian API client modules. So the core module is the Python GitGuardian client. So we're going to go from py_GitGuardian, and we're going to import our GG client. So remember, we installed py_GitGuardian, so we're going to import the GitGuardian client from this now. And we're also going to import some configurations. So we're going to go from py_GitGuardian.config, import the multi-document limit. Now, just quickly, the multi-document limit is essentially the maximum payload that we can send the API. So the API allows for asynchronous scanning, which means that we can't clog it up with a huge request for, I don't know, thousands and thousands of documents. So what it does is it creates a limit of 20 documents or 2 megabytes. So we need to break our payload up into chunks that meet that requirement. So the multi-document limit just imports all of the variables that create that limit. Now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to initialize the GitGuardian client. So we're going to append our API key to the GitGuardian client. So we're going to go client equals GG client, and then in brackets API underscore key equals API underscore key. So this appends and initializes our client so that it has all the information ready to go. Now we're ready to start loading the files that we want to scan into an array. So we're going to create a list of dictionaries for scanning. So to first do this, we're going to go create an empty array called toScan. And now we're going to use our glob module to find the path names of the files that we want to scan. So for name in glob.glob. Now we can actually do this a couple of ways. Now we can either do a recursive scan, which means that we can scan everything forward of where our Python scanner file is. We can do this by going *****, or we can specify a specific file path in here. And that's what I'm going to do, because I have a folder that has a whole bunch of fake secrets in it that we should be able to detect. And then we're going to go recursive equals true. And this means that it's going to go forward into new folders. It's going to keep going. But I'm going to add an if statement in here to exclude some files. So I already know that I have some secrets in .env files, but I have these well documented and excluded from any Git repositories. So I'm going to ignore any secrets that are within a .env file. So if .env in name, I want to exclude that. Now also I want to exclude the folder name. Now obviously I want to scan what's inside the folder directories, but the folder itself will create an error if I try and scan it because it doesn't have any information in it. So I'm also going to exclude os.path and is directory isdir name. And then we're going to go continue. Okay, and now we need to start appending these documents into our empty array. So with open name as function, fn, we're going to take our toScan array and we're going to go append, and we're going to go our document, which is going to be the document itself, so function.read, and then we're also going to append our file name, which is the path name of our files. So that's os.path.basename and then name. Now, at this point, let's just run a quick check to make sure that we don't have any unwanted errors so far. So I'm just going to add a quick print tag in here, and we're going to jump into our console. We're going to run this and just make sure that we can see all of the files that have been loaded into our array. So I'm going to run this now. Hopefully I'm not going to get an error, and nope. And you can see here all the files and all the information from the files inside that array. So let's get back to our document. I'm going to comment this out. Now, the next thing we need to do is we need to process in a chunked way to avoid passing the multi-document limit. So if you remember, I talked about the multi-document limit before, and what we're going to do is we're going to break up our payload into chunks that are equal to or less than the multi-document limit, because if we exceed this, we're going to get an error on the API side. So we're going to create a new empty array here called toProcess, and then we're going to loop through our toScan array, so for I in range, but we're going to do this in steps. So we want to start at 0, and we want to finish at the total length of the array, so length or len toScan. And then we want to do this in steps that equal the multi-document limit. Now, because we pulled this in from the GitGuardian client configuration, we have all the parameters that we need to meet in the variable multi-document limit. And then we're going to create a variable called chunk, and it's going to equal everything in our toScan array that we're currently looped through. Using a try block, we're going to scan our current chunk using the multi-content scan command from the GitGuardian API. Before we get too ahead of ourselves, let's also add in some exceptions where the scan will fail. For example, this could be if the file name's too long for the schema. So we're going to add these exceptions in by using exception as exec. Well, this is where we're going to be using our traceback module so that we can print the exact line that our exceptions are failing on. So we can go print exe in brackets 2, and then we're going to use our sys module, and we're going to print off our exceptions. We're also going to add in a quick if statement here that if our scan is not a success, so if not scan.success, we're going to print ourselves a nice friendly error message. So error scanning some files, results may be incomplete. And then we're going to print off our scan. And lastly, we're going to add our scan results into our toProcess array. So toProcess.extend, and then we're going to go scan.scan results, and this will add in our scan results. And that's actually all the code that we need to scan our files. Now, obviously, if we run this, we won't get any results back yet because we haven't printed anything. But if this all seems like a little bit too much like magic of how simple it is, well, that's thanks to the GitGuardian client that we're using, as well as the GitGuardian API. So again, big advocate for this method. But let's print off some results so that we can see if we've detected any secrets. So how we're going to print our results is we're going to loop through our scan results. So we're going to do this in a for loop. So for I, scan results, in enumerate toProcess. So we're going to pull out our scan results from our toProcess array. And then if our scan results have a policy break, we're going to print the chunk file name, and we're also going to print the policy break count. Now, if you're wondering what a policy break is, so a policy break is essentially a detected secret. The API can also detect things like illegal file names if you don't want them, banned file extensions. We call all of that a policy break. So in this case, when we're saying, does it have any policy breaks? We're really asking, does it have any secrets? But we're going to continue with the language of policy breaks so we keep it consistent. So when we get our policy break count, well, that's the number of secrets that it's found in this particular file. So this here is our first real checkpoint. So we can go ahead, let's save this and open back in our console, and let's run this script, and we'll be able to detect any secrets that we have in here. So now we can take a quick look at our first results, and you can see here that in our services.json file we have one policy break, settings.py file we have a policy break, and a few others. So we can see that we have policy breaks, but it doesn't give us any more information about what they are, so the type of secret that is detected. We can actually easily add this in. So if we go back to our scanner Python script, we can now print the policy break type. So this is going to pull up the type of secret that has been detected. So this is really easy again. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go for each policy break in our results, so scan_results .policy breaks. We're going to print the policy break type from our scan results. So let's run this again. And as you can see, the results that we get are the same as before, as settings.py has one policy break. But it also gives us the type of secret that it is, in this case, a Django secret key. And the same for the other ones that we have a basic authentication string, we have a Google key, sorry. So we can see what type of secrets they are that have been identified from GitGuardian. So that's really quite cool. We can actually even take this a bit further. Let's say that we want to know the actual secret that is detected. So we want to pull up the actual API key or API token and display this. And we can do this too. And again, just a couple of lines of code. So we go back to our scanner Python script. So the secrets themselves are actually called matches. So it's the match of the policy break. So we're going to print our matches here. So we're going to do this same process as before, but this time we're going to go for match in policy break dot matches. Then we're going to print match dot match type. And now if we run the script again, we see that we have all the information as before, but we have the actual API keys or the actual credentials that triggered the policy break, the match that triggered the policy break printed. So you should be able to see now how we can extrapolate this process of scanning files within directories and move it into different services. Now, you may also want to implement this in an application somewhere or automate it. One very helpful extra little bit that we're going to go into now is printing the results in a JSON format, because JSON format is much easier to use in other processes. So we can actually do this super simply, and it's just really a couple of lines of code. So we're quickly going to print this in JSON now. So back to our Python scanner script. So let's start again. We'll leave the initial results there, but we're going to print a whole new set of results. So we're going to start this the same way as before. For I, scan results in enumerate and the to process array. And then we're going to go, if the scan results have policy breaks, then we're going to print our scan results. And then here's just one small line, to_JSON. And that's it. Now, let's go back and quickly run the script again, and you will see that, yep, we get our results in a JSON format. This is one of my favorite features because it's so simple and so useful, particularly when you're wanting to automate this in your software development lifecycle or in your pipelines. Now, this is obviously a very basic example, but hopefully you can see the power of this and you can see where we can potentially go, which gets me excited. Now, if you need any help with this at all, you can reach out to me or any of the other support team at GitGuardian by going onto the GitGuardian website. And if you're creating something particularly cool, I would love to hear about it, how you're using the API in your software development lifecycle or for your company. So that's it today, and I hope to see you guys again in the next tutorial that we'll be going through.